right, good morning. Let's come to order and go on the record, please. I'm Charlotte Mitchell, Chair of the Utilities Commission. With me this morning are the following commissioners. When I call your name, please announce your presence. Commissioner Brown-Bland,
Good morning.
Commissioner Gray,
Good morning.
Commissioner Clodfelter,
Yes, good morning.
Commissioner Duffley,
Good morning.
Commissioner Hughes,
Good morning.
and Commissioner McKissick.
Good morning, President.
In compliance with State Government Ethics Act, I remind members of the commission of our duty to avoid conflicts of interest and inquire at this time as to whether any member of the commission has a known conflict of interest with respect to matters coming before us this morning. The record will reflect that no conflicts have been identified, so we'll proceed with public staff electric item P1.
Good morning. I'm Jay Lucas with the Energy Division. Item P1 is an application by Oak Solar LLC for a certificate of environmental compatibility and public convenience and necessity to construct a new 230 kV transmission tap line to interconnect to Oak Solar's solar facility. The public staff recommends that the commission grant the requested certificate.
Move approval of the recommendation.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that the item be approved as recommended by the public staff. Any questions or discussion on the motion? All right, hearing none, I'll call the roll for a vote. When I call your name, please indicate aye if you support the motion and no if you do not support the motion. Commissioner Brown-Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Gray,
Aye.
Commissioner Clodfelter,
Aye.
Commissioner Duffley,
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes,
Aye.
Commissioner McKissick,
Aye.
and for the record, I support the motion as well, and the motion carries. All right, just checking in with John. Have we lost video feed?
It looks like it.
Okay.
Video is back.
All right, perfect. All right, we'll proceed now to public staff electric item P2.
Good morning. This is Jack Floyd with the Energy Division. And if, with your permission, I will address item 2 and item 4 simultaneously, if that's okay.
All right, please proceed.
Very similar. Item 2 is a request by Duke Energy Progress. Item 4 is a request by Duke Energy Carolinas to modify their respective load control programs, air-conditioned load control programs, to remove the limits on availability of those programs and open it to all residential customers. That's the only modification proposed for both programs. The modifications would allow all customers on any residential rate schedule to participate, including those that were recently approved in the time of use orders, E2 sub 1280 and E7 sub 1253. The public staff has reviewed both requests and based on our review recommends that you issue our proposed orders approving the proposed modification for both companies. Progress, it would be the residential service load control program, and for Duke Carolinas, the residential load control program, a slightly different name.
Move approval of the recommendation for items P2 and P4.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that the items be approved as recommended by the public staff. Are there questions or discussion on that motion?
Yes, Madam Chair, I do have a question for Mr. Floyd.
All right.
To the extent that the item speaks to the modifications being focused on winter peaking, are there any other changes between the programs as we're accustomed to them in terms of being AC control? Is there another heat control going on or no?
With respect to these items, there's no other modification other than simply opening up the existing programs as they are presently constituted to all residential customers.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Did
Any
you have
additional-
something else that you were going to add, Mr. Flo?
No, I mean, they still remain winter focused to a large extent. That's the only thing I was going to add.
All right, thank you.
All right. Any additional questions or discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the roll for a vote. Indicate your support for the motion with an aye and your opposition with a no. Commissioner Brown Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Gray,
Aye.
Commissioner Gladfelter,
Aye.
Commissioner Duffley,
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes,
Aye.
Commissioner McKissick.
Aye.
For the record, I support the motion as well, and the motion carries. All right. Thank you, Mr. Floyd. We'll proceed now to public staff, electric item P3.
Item 3 is a request by Duke Energy Progress to modify their service regulations to eliminate a minimum bill provision related to contract demand. The modification clarifies that new customers and customers modifying their contract demands would not be billed on the basis of a contract demand for the first 12 months of service following the change. No other modifications are proposed. This has come to light because of the implementation of the Customer Connect billing system, where new customers and those changing their contract demands could immediately be charged a minimum bill based on that contract demand rather than their actual billing demands. The modification would allow a grace period for the first 12 months of service based on the actual billing demands rather than contract demands. Gives the customers a time to ramp up their loads to the contract demand without being adversely impacted by the minimum per bill provision during that time. I included a couple of things in the agenda item just for your perspective. We looked at minimum bills in the last rate case for Duke Progress, that's sub 1219 case, and about 800 non-residential customers were impacted by the provision of minimum bill. It's not clear that the minimum bills for new customers versus existing customers would be heavily impacted, but we don't believe there would be a big change in terms of revenues. The other issue that came to light is there is a companion item, which I'll mention in a moment, item 5, by Duke Carolinas, for a similar request. Duke Carolinas makes a request to provide a grace period of 4 months rather than 12. And we attempted to try to figure out what the difference was and why the difference was necessary. This is one of these issues that stems from the history of Duke Progress and Duke Carolinas, and these structural issues are tough to address outside of general rate cases. And the public staff believes that it's appropriate to deal with this alignment issue in the context of a general rate case. As far as I can recall, this issue has not come up in the comprehensive rate study that we have been going through. So I don't have a whole lot of new information based on that. But based on our review, the public staff believes the modification is reasonable and recommends that the commission issue our proposed order approving Duke Progress's proposed modification to its service regulation as filed.
Move approval of the recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the item be approved as recommended by the public staff. Are there any questions or discussion on that motion?
Madam Chair, I did have one question, Mr.
All right,
Floyd.
please proceed.
Other than that explanation that it's due to, I guess, the institutional history or culture of the two different companies, was there any further explanation why one would need 4 months and the other one 12 that could be readily provided at this time? I mean, it was, when I read through that information, I was still at somewhat of a loss to understand that discrepancy or why there would be a need to have the different ramp up periods.
Yes, sir. I believe Teresa Reed with the company is online and able to, I think, address that question to you.
That would be excellent, Ms. Reed, if you could do so.
I can. My name is Teresa Reed. I am the Director of Rates and Regulatory Planning for Duke Energy Carolinas and Duke Energy Progress. And we do have structural issues between the two utilities with respect to our large rate schedules for certain customers, for non-residential customers. So for Duke Energy Progress, we have a medium general class that goes from 30 kW to 999 kW, and then at which point you would move into a large general service schedule, which starts with 1 megawatt. If you're a customer and you're ramping up past the 1 megawatt range, we want to put you on the best rate schedule until you ramp up. So the best rate schedule would be MGS or SGS TOU, which are medium general service schedules. And then if you pass the 1 kW or the 1 megawatt range, you would move over to an LGS schedule. The demand rates, if you look at those schedules, are very different. So for MGS, the demand rate is around $7 per kW. If you look at LGS, it's 15 kW, and there's a minimum of 1,000 kW to be on that schedule. So if you don't ramp up fast enough, you will be hit with minimum charges on the Duke Energy Progress side that are significant. And the public staff had the same question as you have. We provided an example and a calculation to show that it could be drastically different depending upon your contract demand. So for Duke Energy Progress, we've had this practice for a long time. It wasn't transparent in the service regulations, and we were attempting to make it transparent. We also recognize that we need to align between the utilities. We feel that at this time, it would be a little bit much to do that. We need time to examine what the impacts would be to customers. And to be frank with you, Commissioner, we would probably lean towards a 12-month ramp up for both utilities at the next rate case to give customers the fairest advantage as possible. We think that shortening it to 4 months would be a little bit much for our Duke Energy Progress non-residential customers. But we wanted to be transparent with what is occurring in the billing system when we felt what we have now doesn't reflect what is really happening in our billing system. And we think 12 months is reasonable given the difference between MGS and LGS and rates.
Ms. Reed, thank you very much for that information. I think it provides excellent historical context for the differential and why the recommendation is what it is at this time. Chair Mitchell, I have no further questions.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Reed. Any additional questions from commissioners? All right, hearing none, I'll call the roll for a vote. Indicate your support for the motion with an aye and your opposition with a no. Commissioner Brown-Bland.
Aye.
Commissioner Gray.
Aye.
Commissioner Clodfelter.
Aye.
Commissioner Duffley.
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes.
Aye.
Commissioner McKissick.
Aye.
And for the record, I support the motion as well, and the motion carries. All right, we'll proceed now to Public Staff Electric item P5.
P5 is a request by Duke Energy Carolinas to modify certain residential rate schedules to remove the eligibility requirement that those residential dwellings be constructed on a permanent foundation, and also to eliminate the minimum bill provision related to contract demands in its rate schedules. The first modification would modify service regulations to allow certain residential dwellings to be eligible for service under residential rate schedules. The modification would extend eligibility to those schedules for what has been non-qualifying dwellings like tiny homes that are not built on permanent foundations. This modification aligns Duke Carolina's requirements with those similar requirements of Duke Progress. The second request is similar to item 3 that we were just discussing. It would modify their rate schedules to allow new customers and customers modifying their contract demands to not be billed for the contract demand in the first 4 months of service following that change. Not to reiterate what I've already said, but as explained by Ms. Reed, Duke Carolinas is requesting a 4-month grace period rather than a 12 in this proceeding. As I said earlier, we had looked in the sub 1214 rate case at minimum bill issues, and there are a lot fewer customers impacted by minimum bills under the Duke Carolinas existing structure. Given the explanation by Ms. Reed and everything else, not to reiterate the agenda item, the public staff believes both requests by Duke Carolinas are reasonable and recommends that you issue our revised order. We had to submit a corrected order, but to issue our revised or corrected order approving Duke Carolina's request to its service regulations and rate schedules as filed.
Move approval of the recommendation for electric item P5.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the item be approved as recommended by the public staff. Are there questions or discussion on that motion?
Chairman Mitchell, I did have one question.
All right, you may proceed, Commissioner McKissick.
Yeah, and I don't know if it would be to Mr. Floyd or to Ms. Reed. When I was reading the information there about, having the permanent foundations and how it would treat tiny homes, that made a lot of sense. But it raised the question in my mind is how we treat mobile homes today that are not on permanent foundations. I mean, some people will place them on permanent foundations, they become a fix, but then some people just use the tie-down structures. So how is that being treated today? Do they qualify or do they not? It's a tangential issue, but I was curious.
Right, it is.
As a result of the explanation, yeah.
This has been an issue for a number of years dealing with electric utilities. But my understanding is that even though a mobile home is not on what we might consider a permanent foundation or a fixed structure, the tie downs in the way they are tied down, that is considered to be part of that by local building codes. So that has not been an issue. Normally, we're looking at things like recreational vehicles and things like that that are movable. This tiny home phenomena seems to be one that is more similar to recreational vehicles than we would equate to a mobile home that's tied down rather than be on a pier and structure as a foundation. So that has not been an issue thus far that I'm aware of.
Thank you very much, Mr. Floyd. That fills in that void in my mind. I knew it was a tangential issue, but it was something that came to me. So I greatly appreciate that explanation. Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions or discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the roll for a vote. Indicate your support with an aye and your opposition with a no. Commissioner Brown Bland.
Aye.
Commissioner Gray.
Aye.
Commissioner Clodfelter.
Aye.
Commissioner Duffley.
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes.
Aye.
Commissioner McKissick.
Aye.
For the record, I support the motion as well, and the motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Floyd. All right, we'll proceed now to public staff, item P6.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Tommy Williamson with the Energy Division. Item P6 is an application from Duke Energy Progress for a certificate of environmental compatibility and public convenience and necessity, and a motion for waiver of notice and hearing to construct a new 230 kV transmission tap line, approximately 1,300 feet in length, to support the load needs of a new aircraft manufacturing customer in Asheville, North Carolina. The public staff has determined that the application meets the requirements for a certificate and waiver of the notice and hearing. The public staff recommends that the commission grant the certificate and waive the notice and hearing requirement. Thank you.
Move approval of the recommendation.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the item be approved as recommended by the public staff. Are there any questions or discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call the roll for a vote. Indicate your support with an aye and your opposition with a no. Commissioner Brown Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Gray,
Aye.
Commissioner Clodfelter,
Aye.
Commissioner Duffy,
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes,
Aye.
Commissioner McKissick.
Aye.
For the record, I support the motion as well, and the motion carries. All right, thank you, Mr. Williamson. All right, we'll proceed now to public staff electric item P7.
Good morning. I'm Evan Lawrence with the Public Staff's Energy Division. Electric item P7 consists of an application for a renewal of a certificate of public convenience and necessity. Public staff recommends that the commission issue an order approving the application and issuing the requested certificate.
Move approval of the recommendation.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that the item be approved as recommended by the public staff. Are there questions or discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call the roll for a vote. Indicate your support with an aye and your opposition with a no. Commissioner Brown Bland,
Aye.
Commissioner Gray,
Aye.
Commissioner Clodfelter,
Aye.
Commissioner Duffy,
Aye.
Commissioner Hughes,
Aye.
Commissioner McKissick.
Aye.
And for the record, I support the motion as well, and the motion carries. All right, thank you, Mr. Lawrence. The commission has before us our minutes of the January 24th, 2022 staff conference for approval. I'll take a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that the minutes be approved. Any questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving those minutes indicate with an aye.
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 Is there anyone opposed? Okay, our minutes of January 24th are approved. Before we adjourn, any updates for the commission? Any additional business? All right, hearing none, we'll be adjourned. Let's go off the record. Thank you very much, everybody.